to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the Tuesday, January 2nd, 2018 Exeter Town Council meeting to order. Would the clerk please take the roll?
Kevin McGovern is sick. Dan Patterson.
Here.
Cal Ellis.
Here.
Frank Long.
Here.
Ray Morrissey.
Dear.
Let's see, next up is public comment. First up is Gina Thurn.
Hi. Comments on two pieces actually of unfinished, that are on the agenda tonight for unfinished business. The first has to do with section F, the introduction, consideration, and action regarding amendments to renewable energy and solar. I just want to say, after the last town council meeting, I noticed that some of the sample solar panels were set up, I believe it was on the Andrews Farm down on Route 102. And in driving down to Walmart, Warren had told me they were there, so I was looking for them and I didn't notice them at all. And finally, coming back, I actually had to slow down and almost stop the vehicle to see them. They look beautiful. But from that standpoint, I thought it was worth mentioning that the visual impact to general traffic driving down Route 102 was minimal, if not negligible. That's my first comment. Second comment has to do with section H under unfinished business, which is the application for a hawker's license for Walt Litton. I just wanted to say that I am fully in support of that license being issued. Walt is an Exeter icon, and it would be an absolute travesty if his hot dog stand were not permitted to be there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Warren Thurn.
Yes, Lauren Thurn from Gardner Road. Commentary regarding, is looking at communications, number 1 from Michael Cerullo. Marijuana grow water consumption impacts. His communication, while I haven't seen it, might be addressing what I wanted to say. I heard his testimony a few meetings back, and his statement that hydroponics uses 5 gallons per plant per day. I was hoping to be able to actually do some research and have some papers to put in front of you folks. The best I've been able to come up with is 5 gallons for a recirculative system. Not that it uses 5 gallons, but that's what's needed to get a recirculative system to work. The actual consumption being much lower. At a maximum size plant, maybe as much as 2 to 2.5 gallons. Predominantly much less. Personally, as a hydroponic vegetable grower, tomato plants 12, 14 feet tall at full growth, utilizing maximum a gallon per day. And more I've heard, being at some planning meetings, commentary of these places, hydroponics are going to be using 5 gallons per day of water, going to be impacting the aquifers and other people around them. And not as a support or opposition to marijuana growing, but as a hydroponic vegetable grower, I don't want that same information, which I feel is very inaccurate and misleading, to be utilized as something that will be brought to me in time saying you shouldn't be doing hydroponics because you use too much water. And I would say his letter might have addressed that, but in case it hasn't, I just want to make that statement.
The last person for public comment is Earl Newman.
Good evening, I'm Earl Newman. I'm a special agent with the Rhode Island SPCA. I understand that there may be some concern or questions that the council has regarding the incident on Gardner Road last week. So that's what I'm here for.
Just for full disclosure, I asked this gentleman to appear tonight in public comment, not knowing whether or not there would be any concerns of the council. I thought it would be appropriate for him to give a statement just an overview. Essentially what everybody read in the media and the press is accurate. I didn't know if there was anything else that the council wanted to ask of him. So with that, unless there's any other additional comments that this gentleman would like to make, I would suggest, Mr. President, that the animal shelter report be brought to the front of the agenda so that way we can address this issue.
Okay, what we'll do, Frank, is we got number 4, acknowledgements and announcements, and then we'll have number 5, approval of the agenda.
Very good.
Number 4, acknowledgements and announcements. A is recognition and acknowledgement, Terry Petrarca, designated Rhode Island certified tax assessor. Calvin, you're up.
Thank you. Just in way of a brief introduction, for those of you who don't know our assessor, her name is Carrie Petrarca. Her office is there. We had hoped she could be here tonight, but she, like the council president, no connection, but she's also succumbed to some kind of this cold and flu stuff that's going around, and she's not in a good way. And she said, I'd really like to be, because I asked her to come so that we could recognize her. She said she wished she could. I said, don't come, stay home, don't spread it. But just a word about this young lady. She came to us through an intern program, probably 6 or 7 years ago. An intern program from the federally funded Job Corps Center here in Exeter. And it was very quickly recognized by folks here in the building that she was a young lady with a good deal of determination, diligence, intelligence, experience with computers, and found her way to the assessor's office, where she soon proved to be quite invaluable, and the assessor at the time said, we can't lose this lady. So when she finished her program, she was eventually hired as a clerk in the assessor's office. And subsequent assessor, who came to us from Warwick, was determined to help her grow into the position, sent her to all the training / educational courses that were offered locally by the Rhode Island Association of Assessors. And then that young lady, Penny Robertson, left us, and we hired Terry Petrarca. And she's the youngest now, she's now the youngest certified assessor in the state. I'd like to read a certificate of designation that she received a couple of months ago. I was going to present this to her this evening, even though she's already seen it, but it was really so that you all know what she has accomplished. And it simply reads, from the state of Rhode Island, certificate of designation, the designation of Rhode Island certified assessor is hereby awarded to Carrie Petrarca in recognition of the successful completion of all requirements. That's signed by the Director of the Department of Revenue and the President of the Rhode Island Association of Assessing Officers. And before she could be fully certified or designated as a certified assessor, she had to serve in the position for 1 year, which she has done, 1 year plus, with considerable success, and the staff here speaks very highly of her. I also was to present her on behalf of the council with some flowers, which I hustled into the building when I arrived earlier today, and then discussed with her this evening and found she wasn't coming, so I hustled those flowers back to her office and told her that on behalf of the council, and I was sure all the residents of Exeter would congratulate her on her accomplishments. That is my spiel regarding my new assessor, and when you get to meet her, if you haven't, please wish her well. She's doing a great job in there. Thank you.
Next up, on the acknowledgements and announcements, we've got a resolution here for Jeff Marcon, who's just walking the door somewhere. Town of Exeter, Rhode Island, resolution of the town council, resolution recognizing the community development consortium, whereas this community development block grant program hereafter, the program, helps provide decent housing, expand economic opportunities, and create suitable living environments by developing viable communities with federal funds administered through the state of Rhode Island. Whereas Jeffrey A. Marchant has worked with program funds since 1988, first during his tenure at South County Community Action, assisting the town of Exeter with home repair from the start. Then founding Community Development Consortium on March 18, 1996. And whereas the town joined the consortium and has benefited from the consortium's assistance to its most vulnerable and financially strapped populations through activities such as housing rehabilitation, public services like food pantries, public improvements, and job training for close to 20 years. And whereas Mr. Marchant is the consortium's founder, director, and only full-time staff, and assists 10 municipalities with their program applications, procurement, contracting, administration, compliance, monitoring, drawdown, and overall management, and has remained knowledgeable, personable, accessible, and responsive through the ever-changing regulations and guidance from the state and federal level. Now therefore, be it resolved that the town acknowledges the void to be filled as the consortium pursues a replacement entity and recognizes, appreciates, and thanks the consortium and Jeff for his invaluable and incalculable support to the town and its residents and to neighboring communities of the state over these many years. Given under the seal of the town council of the town of Exeter, this second day of January, 2018, right? Thank you, Jeff. We need a motion to adopt the resolution.
I would be happy to move to adopt that resolution.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
You've been well served.
I'm gonna take a bow.
Next up is approval of the agenda order, number 5. Frank, you said you wanted to pull that one report. You want to put it right after consent agenda?
Yes, please, Mr. President.
Consent agenda, any reports need to be pulled? Animal control, correct?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Motion to approve the agenda order
As
with
amended.
pulling the animal control report,
So moved.
putting it right after number 6. Okay. Second, discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Let's see, that was charitable trust, we have one in there. Okay, so we'll need to pull that for, actually, we don't have to pull that. Any reports to be pulled, just the animal control. Communications, Calvin.
Several that I noted we would be addressing under appointments or elsewhere, but I did want to address number 1 and 2, 13, 16, 17, 21, and 23.
What was that, 23?
23.
Frank?
I'm all set, Mr. President.
Ray.
Cal took one line.
I had 12. Okay, let's see. Approval of minutes, you have to repeat yourself on 2. Okay, so. That's it, motion.
I need to pull E1.
Oh, you weren't here, okay.
No, for page 14. Sorry about that, any change, let's see if I can go here. We entered into the executive session and Cal wasn't here, it said that Cal was here, and voted yes.
Okay. You thought that, right? So we need to work
I
that.
eat these things, man.
That's good.
So we need to vote on these separately?
Yes. But, well, this is consent agenda, so you hold one of them.
Amended.
The other one, if there's no comments on it, it doesn't.
Okay, so I need a motion to approve the consent agenda with the amended meeting minutes from December 4th.
So move.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's see, need approval of meetings for the executive session too, correct? Motion to approve.
It's done by consent.
Okay. All right. Next up, Frank, is animal control.
So Director Matchek likes to give us a report with regards to animal control, and then we can go back to the gentleman who came here from Rhode SPCA.
Go ahead, Steve.
All right, most things right at the shelter are running very well. I've had some few issues with some freezing pipes due to the building design and just the way the system works there with the soffit vents. We've solved those problems for the time being. These extreme cold temperatures have been hard there and other facilities as well. But other than that, for the animal portion of it, everything's well there. The counts are basically the same as last month. We have one stray we picked up in the vicinity of Gardner Road that the owner of the property in question claims is not his. So that's just considered a stray. And that's the only dog from that area that we currently have in the facility. And that's status quo.
Okay. So it's my understanding that all the animals that were rescued from Gardner Road, primarily dogs and some goats, the dogs are in possession of SPCA and/or Potter League, I understand.
That's what I'm understood, yes.
Can you give us a little insight on with regards to the goats? I guess there were 2 kids and 3 lactating females. Are those in possession of the shelter?
Not at the Exeter Animal Shelter. They've all been sent out to, we didn't bring a list of all of the different individuals, but some of the animals remain because they were being raised for food. So they remained on the property. But some of the animals were removed from the property. But there were goats and chickens and a few other animals still there. Again, they were being raised specifically for food.
Right, so are the goats under the supervision of our animal control?
No,
No.
you know, I'm not. Due to the, we limit on what I can really say because of the court case pending tomorrow. So I can't really say a lot or too much because of that. He has not, he's been arrested, but not.
Well, I'm not
been
asking
through the
specific
system.
questions with regards to.
So no, we don't have
gentleman.
any
I
of
was
the
just
animals.
asking more concerned with regards to.
We
the
do
animals.
not have possession, that town of Exeter has no possession of the animals from that site.
Okay.
We only expended very few hours of personnel time in the removal. We had 8 dogs for one night, and the next day they went north. So we do not, we're not expending any money on this case. There's no time being spent or food at this time.
Okay. Now, my concern more was for the welfare of the animals.
Oh, no, they're all,
I didn't know
what
whether they
could
were in
be,
possession of the town or what the situation was.
what we could remove legally was removed. That was done.
I understand. Okay, do you have any other comments, sir, with regards to the animals and the dogs specifically?
I don't think so. I know the statute allows us in our animal control to foster the animals, if you will, if we don't have the ability to care for them at our specific facility. So I would guess that's probably what your animal control is doing, something like that. The animals that were left because they were livestock, and they didn't fall specifically under the statute that we cited in removing the dogs. They appeared to be in generally good health. you know, our intent, I guess, is to try to get, or facilitate removal of those animals at some point after the arraignment.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the state statute allows the owner to still have possession of 3 animals, correct?
I think that's your ordinance.
Right. Oh, that's right, that's ordinance, that's not state
Correct.
statute. Okay, very good. Okay.
So barring any provisions put in place by the court for ownership of the animals after, you know, after his arraignment, yeah, there should be no, and as long as he's in compliance with the ordinance, I don't see an issue.
Right. Okay, very good. Yeah.
Calvin,
I don't know,
Calvin?
Councilman Ellis has a question?
I do, because I only know what I read in the paper.
Right.
Obviously, some have been more involved in this. Did you say you're an officer of the SBC?
Yes, sir.
So I just, do I understand that, from what I'm gathering, that our local animal officers responded initially, and then did they call you in for assistance, or did it go
So
a different
we-
route?
We kind of responded simultaneously with your animal control and state police. We, I guess your animal control had received a complaint and advised us, and before anybody entered the property, we kind of all gathered together. So it was,
So they relied on your expertise and experience in a case
yeah,
like
I
this.
think that
So,
amount of,
to be
the initial complaints kind of warranted, I think, our response.
Well, it would appear that it was
Handled very well.
handled exactly the way it should be.
Absolutely.
Or it sounds like it was.
I think it was a good coordinated effort between the state police, animal control, and RSSPCA for benefiting the animals. So, like I said before this gentleman spoke in public comment, I thought it was to the interest of the council and the public to have him show up, make a statement and be available for questions in case anybody in the public or anybody in the council had questions regarding it, because I didn't know what the situation was gonna be at the council meeting tonight, whether residents or concerned individuals were gonna come and ask the council members questions that we didn't necessarily have the ability to answer, whereas this gentleman would have, so.
No, I think it's very thoughtful of you and proactive of you to do this.
Well, I appreciate him coming out tonight on his own time, and I appreciate the update and that check as well.
But I'd just like to say something else, because through months of budget preparation and other concerns, issues are raised about a need for having a staff like we have and a facility like we have. And it sounds to me like that we can't avoid it. We should have that kind of a response. And I appreciate that you, I think we all do, that you came to their assistance. But it's a joint effort, coordinated. It seems like we need some local people
I
available as
mean,
well.
they certainly would have a better handle on what's going on in the community than we would from East Providence.
I echo Councilman Myers' comment. Thank you for being here to help us understand.
We have 2 ACOs here too. We have Lori O'Brien and Dina Dolan here tonight. Thank you for helping. You did help, and Dina, full-time ACO, and Steve, what they do down there, what we do for our town, how they respond, and Mira Cal's comment about what we have. We appreciate what you do for us, and you coming out tonight, and taking the time to come out tonight, for anybody has concerns, you know, if anybody does about. Any questions at all?
Questions?
No?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, number 7, vacancies and appointments. A, personnel board members. Conservation Commission. Okay, B, resignations, animal shelter attendant Christy Burdick. Another individual resigned, so I guess we need a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept your resignation.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. I'll make the motion to post that vacancy.
Second.
Animal shelter attendant.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Uh, Next up is appointment C, Exeter Rural Land Preservation Trust Committee member, unexpired term ending March 31st, 2019, beginning date of appointment. And we had two. One was a Nan Quinlan, and the other one was a John G. Bradley III. Ideas, so I kind of leaning towards Mr. Bradley when I was reading his letter.
I think both of them, but, you know. do you
Well,
wanna say
no,
something?
well, and I think I'm very pleased to see two people come forward as they
Right.
have, both with interest and both with some
Excellent
levels
credentials.
of expertise, and the young lady has worked with the South Kingstown Land Trust, which I know has been up and running for a very long time. Mr. Bradley has.
He's British Land Trust, is.
Yeah, I mean, they're, so, you know, my thought was, and I wish we could do something for both of them, so, I mean, my thought was that if we took them in the order in which we received the application, and hope that the other individual would not go away and be prepared to continue to
It
help.
looks like we kind of both the same day.
One is under
17,
13,
26.
number 13 communication, the other one's number 21. The first one was dated December 17th, the second one is the 26th. Because I don't know, I mean, they both, got a point for both. So that would be my thought, and based on my thinking, I will make a motion. If it's not seconded, then it doesn't go anywhere, but I will move that we appoint Nan Quinlan to the Exeter Land Trust, Rural Preservation Trust Committee.
Second,
Second.
discussion?
No, I think, yeah, both letters are,
It's kind of like flip a coin.
yeah, it's like flip a coin, yeah, so.
Sorry.
Oh, wait, is that that's Mr. Bradley back there, isn't it?
Yes.
Thank you for your interest. I'm sorry that we're talking in front of you.
Oh, no, that's totally fine.
But if I could discuss my own motion, please don't go away.
Oh, no,
Please,
no, I'm good.
be interested. You've got contact information, we'll not let you go. And of course, the other young lady might say, oh, well, thank you, but maybe it is more than I wanna take on, so you'd certainly be our second choice. Or the first, depending on the motion. There's a second, but it hasn't been. John, what am I gonna say? A man sits here, he wants the job.
Wait, now I gotta change your heart, Calvin.
It's
More
totally
comments?
fine, whatever
Well, we
you
do,
decide.
we do have the vacancy that's inactive for the Committee for the Conservation Commission, so if we get that active again, maybe Mr. Bradley would be interested in serving on
How
that.
many people do we need?
I don't know.
It's been vacant a long time.
I don't know, the gentleman took the time to come to the meeting, so. Yeah.
I know, you just messed everything up for me.
Whatever you decide, don't worry about it. Just trying to do my-
Is the other applicant here? The other person who's interested? No?
Call the vote.
Well,
We have a second?
I second the motion for discussion, and we discussed it, but I think we should give proper respect to the gentleman who took the time to come out
That's my
and
feeling.
and appear at the council meeting, so if you wanna put it to a vote, call a vote.
Do you wanna rescind your second, or?
I'll make the motion to appoint Mr. Bradley to the,
Well, let's get rid of the other motion.
you want me to rescind my second first?
Yeah, I think you have to.
Well,
Okay.
that makes it clean, so there's no second.
I rescind my second.
Okay. Want to rescind your motion, Calvin?
No, it died.
Okay, all right. So that motion fails. Okay, we need a new one.
I make a motion to appoint Mr. John G. Bradley III to the Rural Land Preservation Trust Committee, for term expiring March 31st, 2019.
Second.
Oh, listen, I'll second it because once upon a time when I taught high school, this young man was there and he was no problem, he was just a stellar student. And I didn't want anyone to think there might be some bias on my part, so I went with this lady instead. But that rug was pulled out, so I'll second the motion for Mr. Bradley.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
When you've been around a long time, these things happen. Thanks, John.
You'll have to get in touch with Lynn, and she'll get you the names of the people, because I do know, I'm the liaison, we've been having problems getting meeting places, so. I remember standing in the cold, locked out of Wallingford School, so.
Yeah.
I believe Jorum's the clerk there, so. Thank you, sir. Okay, next up, official tree warden 2018. Do we need to post this? Have we posted?
We haven't posted, the letter that came with the appointment notice, says that in accordance with RIGL 214-1, each sitting town must appoint a licensed arborist as a tree warden each year during the January council meeting. We haven't posted it.
Yeah, I'm gonna, excuse me, I'm gonna move if I could, based on the communication, current experience, I'm gonna move that we reappoint Steve Matchdeck as the tree warden here for the town of Exeter.
You have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
I don't know, how do we know I mean, I think Steve's done a good job so far, but how do we know there aren't any other individuals in the community who might be interested and qualified, so I'm wondering if we should, I know it says January, but, my gut thinks that I think we should put it out for posting.
Okay.
Well, I'm just gonna speak to my motion. We did this before, another individual came forward. I defer to Steve Matchdeck, because he's out there on the road, he sees a problem, he doesn't have to stop and call somebody else in to figure out whether or not he should be addressing a damaged tree, but I say that based on my conversations with him through the years, but that's why I feel we should put him in place. He's the DPW director, and he's out there when there are issues. So I make that motion because I think he can do the job.
Okay, great.
I know there was an incident today where Steve had to move a limb off of Main Road, is that correct?
Correct.
That fell, somebody had reported, had to bring the bucket truck in there to remove it. We had an incident today. I don't know if it shut the road down, it impact the road at all? No.
No, it was hanging above the road.
It's hanging above the road, oh boy. Okay. So just to let you guys know that. Steve and I had talked about that today, so.
So ultimately, if we did post it and somebody else came in who was qualified and interested, and we had a problem in town, then ultimately you have to end up calling Steve anyway, right? Okay. I see Calvin's rationale.
Okay.
Especially in a storm. I mean, something, and I don't know if he'd have to contact another person every time, but if it were, I'm gonna say, my tree that fell, and or something happened, and I don't want somebody to touch it, but he says, I've got to for public safety, and he's the tree warden, and he's the I'm just saying.
No, that makes sense. Yep.
Thus my motion.
Okay.
Sure.
You have a
Okay.
second?
I second.
Okay, any more discussion? All in favor of appointing Steve Matchek, tree warden for the calendar year 2018?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, D, expiring terms, Library Board of Trustees member, Elaine
Rasmussen.
Rasmussen.
She's already given it to us,
Okay, term, so we've already had a letter,
so we haven't made a communication yet, but she's already given us a letter.
okay, we need to post that one. Okay. Good. We need a motion to post.
So moved.
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
But may I, the usual route to write to the current holder seems a moot point, so I don't think we need to direct Madam Clerk to do that, since she's already indicated her interest.
Okay.
Let me stop you, please, before you move on. Can we just correct, backing up to the consent? Could we just place on the record that I supported this because I thought we were gonna pull those minutes because I need to abstain since they wasn't here. So just for clarification, on the motion to approve the consent agenda as amended, could you note, Madam Clerk, that regarding the minutes of those council meetings and sessions of December 4th, that I abstained since I was not here for that meeting? Would that be sufficient that we make note of that here? Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Number 8, public hearings. A, continued proposed amendments to Exeter Code of Ordinances zoning, Appendix A, Article 6, renewable energy, Section 11.2, wind energy conversion systems and zoning, Appendix A, Article 2, zoning district use regulation, Section 2.4.1, use category number 79, wind energy conversion systems. Do we need a motion to open the public hearing again, Lynn?
So move.
Who wants to continue the public hearing?
No, what's it continued for? Because we haven't received anything else from
We
Lynn.
did get something from Ashley.
I believe that was a comparison from town to town, right?
Well, there's also adjustments that she recommends to the list. Just as a point of information, I wasn't here, but I looked at the minutes, was there not a vote to continue the
Yes.
hearing?
I believe we were gonna continue this and have some discussion in a workshop too, on the matter, so.
People signed up for it if you want to entertain discussion.
Yeah, we can do that, so any motion to the public hearing,
Or move to
yeah,
continue?
continued public hearing.
You made the motion, didn't you, Rick?
I made a motion.
Oh, you made a motion, so we need a second.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Let's see, public hearing. First one is Gina Thurn.
I signed up to speak last time. I know you guys heard my concerns as far as the excessive language about visual impact of wind turbines and setbacks being a little bit excessive, as well as my concern that zoning in the draft ordinance would have prohibited wind turbines from RU 2, 3, and 4, which would have eliminated pretty much all farmland. And I stated that I felt it was a backdoor way to ban that. Given that the hearing was continued, I'm more here today to ask, what's the feedback from planning? Because they were gonna take it back and relook at some of those issues, and that's what I'm wondering, because I was not able to get a copy of that, so.
You have it.
What's the verdict?
And next up is Warren Thurn.
Lauren
I'd
Thurn,
like to speak to it.
also from Gardner Road. Yeah, the same basic concerns of, it was continued with comments of planning and council working together on some changes to make it a little less restrictive. Yeah, we came by earlier today in an attempt to get a look at it and said it was not ready for us to be able to view. Find it very challenging to be able to testify in a public hearing on some changes when we haven't had a chance to see them. And more just encourage the council to keep working forward to try and make alternative energy be something that is possible and practical for our community, rather than so restrictive that it's permitted but not really permitted.
Thank you.
May I speak, please? I'm sorry I was absent a month ago from some previously planned travel that my wife planned, not me. But I read all the comments that were made from the last meeting at that hearing. And then I find, when I came here today, that there is a response to concerns that were addressed that I would like to read for this hearing, public hearing. Someone else might be ready to do that. But I try to follow the concerns that you folks expressed and the comments made by the planner here at that hearing. And this is what we received from Ashley Sweet, the planner. As a result of the December 4th public hearing on the draft wind ordinance, I have made the following adjustments and provided the following information as requested. First, the matrix was changed to reflect Council Patterson's request to allow utility scale wind turbines in RE2, RU3, and RU4 by special use permit. Please note that the planning board has not had the opportunity to review this change, and I believe they may have comments and/or concerns regarding this change to the matrix. And I read this to suggest that this is not something we should really finalize at the moment, but she's responding to concerns that apparently, from what I can gather, were made a month ago, December 4th. And when I heard your comment, if I may, here, I read your comment, a copy of what you spoke about with the RU4, and I thought, well, that could be modified. And then I found this today, and she's suggesting it all be modified in all the districts. She also says she's provided examples of fall zones for other communities. What I have found, which we did research in the drafting of the ordinance, our requirement is not excessive and is reasonable. This is her comment to us. Obviously, some would disagree. And the other comment she makes is there was discussion regarding the language around minimizing the visual impact of these systems. There was no specific directive from the council on changing any language. My professional opinion is that this language is reasonable and typical for an ordinance of this nature. And before, I just want to say one more thing. Coming back from being absent here, I spent some time with the planner, and her big concern was that she could not be here tonight for a previous commitment, and that maybe she should be, but she said, I just can't. So her absence doesn't speak to her lack of concern, I know that. And so I didn't see this until this afternoon when I came here to prepare for tonight, so these gentlemen may not have even had a chance. I don't know if you saw that.
No, not yet.
No,
Not till I
because
got
it
here.
kind of came in, late. But I just want to share that for the purposes of this public hearing.
Any more comment from the council? Any more comment from the public?
No, I'm sorry. Well, you all had your turn, and I know I was absent, but I didn't have this information last month, and I just want to share this. She gave us, which they may not have seen, or maybe you had this already, I'm not sure, several other surrounding communities and actions that they have taken.
That was in the packet.
And, I noticed, I don't know that it was mentioned at the public hearing last month, I didn't read anything of this, and she notes that North Kingstown, says that, they've adopted an ordinance. It says, as of the effective date of the passage of the ordinance for which this section is derived, which is November 21st, 2011, WES wind energy systems shall not be allowed in any zoning. I read this about 3 times, because I'm thinking, am I not reading this correctly? That it says any wind energy system that was approved prior to the date of the ordinance is subject to the applicable ordinances and regulations. I mean, I read this to say North Kingstown's going in a direction you folks wouldn't be happy with it, would you? You know, and I'm not saying this is right, I'm just saying she's sharing with what she's found through research. It speaks to Coventry, Providence, Charlestown, Newport, other, you know, concerns that they addressed here. That's it, I'm sorry, I'm done.
Okay. Let's see, we need a motion to close the public hearing?
Do you want to continue?
Well,
Thank you.
do it before the close, okay. Motion to continue the public hearing.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Now we need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll work on this more, 'cause I've got stuff on my desk pertaining to that too, so. Number 9, new business, personnel issues, labor negotiations.
Mr. President, before we move on to that next item, I know we've closed the public hearing, but are we gonna have that work session with the council and the planning board?
I know Lynn's got some dates here for one meeting, we're gonna be working on that later, so.
Okay.
Under the other administrative or no?
Yeah.
I just don't wanna have it continued to the next month, and we're still without a lot of answers for people that have questions. Not to mention their own questions.
Okay. Number 9, new business. A, personnel issues, labor negotiations. Anything? Okay. B, board of canvassers, alternate members, compensation. There's a communication from Maria, our town treasurer. You never gave me that?
I do.
Until I gave it.
I know. Give me an email. Give me a second.
Read it aloud. If they need to vote on it, so.
You know, what she said, you know it?
Yeah, it is about, if they get called to cover for someone,
She recommends a per diem, and I guess I didn't copy it,
So
but I actually,
we don't have that in place already?
well,
we never had alternates until now.
well, the regulars are salary, I don't, you know, they receive a fixed amount, that's what we do. And she suggests a per diem, I think it was about anywhere from $30 to $50 a day, or per session, if I recall. Wasn't that correct? Yeah, and, but you don't remember seeing that, no. And she,
I'm trying to find it right now.
well, and she, also suggested it to come from, you know, contingency, because we don't have which is fine. And, we should probably talk about it without a motion. I'll make a motion that we'll hold the vote. I'll move that we.
Yeah, you better wait until she's quick back.
Oh, that's right, because she can't even take that amendment, I know here, and she can do the other one. I didn't want to keep talking about something without having a motion out of the floor. Well. No, not having any.
No, I'm just saying.
We'll be short recess. Oh, what, Frank has it in his hand?
What?
I have it. Would you like me to
No,
read it? or-
he didn't, he didn't print it.
Please stand by.
He
To our studio
doesn't carry
audience.
his portable printer with him.
Okay.
I have it. You want me to read it, or you want me to?
Read it aloud, Frank, go right ahead.
All right, so from the treasurer, dated December 28th, 2017, good afternoon. I noticed that the Board of Canvassers alternates compensation will be discussed at the next council meeting. I would like to offer the following observations. The members receive a stipend of $62.46 per week. Since the alternate will only be called upon if there is a need due to a regular member not being able to work, may I suggest a stipend on a per diem basis of anywhere between $30 and $50, maybe to be taken out of contingency until we establish a budget for them in the next fiscal year. Also, we need to clarify whether training is also paid, as both we are in for some initial training. I am planning on attending the meeting.
No, what we need is a motion, which will probably never be used, it's just a,
Well, I'll move that the alternate members of the Board of Canvassers be compensated at the rate of $50 per session for those sessions when they call in to take the place of a missing member of the board when the board meets.
I'll second that.
And that's training too.
Mhm.
Is that different?
You want to include that in your motion, Tom? For the training
Including time spent in training.
okay.
We were mandated by the state, Board of Canvassers state.
Board of Elections.
I'm sorry, Board of Elections for the state, Rhode Island, to have two alternate members, one from each party, that's Brackman from the Democrat, one from the Republican Party. And, in case somebody had been sick, that's all, it's just alternate members for the people here to know what's going on here. In case you're taking notes over, I think Jeff's taking notes, so.
Well, or absent for any reason,
Yeah.
vacation, whatever.
Mhm.
And just to clarify, it's actually in state statute, but most small towns have always ignored it because most small towns don't spend any more than they have to. But it does make sense that,
Mhm.
because the board's concerned that there always be people present from both parties, because that's, well, and I was just about to comment, and I know just today Maria told me that she expected to be here, and we were just talking about you, so glad you came by. We're in the process of a motion, Maria.
Talk about hit the ground running.
All right, so, got a motion, got a second, discussion, and now we vote. All in favor? Opposed?
Thank you for your insight, Maria. It's very helpful.
Next
Frank
up.
is ready for email.
Next up is C, introduction, consideration, and possible action, resolution amending an act relating to taxation, which is the solar. Well,
No, the renewable energy credit,
the what now?
the resolution for renewable energy
Yeah, that's the
credit,
solar renewable.
residential.
And I had something in this stack.
It's right here, Dan, if you want to
Oh, it's in
reference
this
it.
pile
Yeah,
somewhere, so.
if you want to reference.
Let's see, this is from Frank DiGregorio, the Exeter Planning Board. I, with the support of the planning board, would like to be added to the upcoming town council agenda regarding a proposed amendment to a Rhode Island statute concerning residential renewable energy tax credit. Frank, are you somewhere back there? What does this exactly do? Can you explain it?
Yes, I can. First of all, I want to explain, first of all, this is not the first time it's been presented to the council. This has been before the council since 2011 to 2015, and
Excuse me.
again in
Excuse me,
2000.
Frank, can you stand up? I can't hear you.
And then again in 2016, when Justin Price and Doreen Costa had sponsored in the State House. And what it does, basically, the residential energy system tax credit removes the tax carryover restriction and allows any credit not used in accordance with subsection B of this section to be carried over to the next following year or 3 years maximum, similar to the federal tax credit. I think in the past, we were trying to get this bill reinstated. Didn't realize it, but it was reinstated last year, and the only thing that we're proposing now is that they extend the credit over a 3-year period rather than just a single year period. And I'd just like to say that one of the added economic benefits of a residential renewable energy system is that it does not contribute to increasing the cost of grid supplied electricity to a consumer like that of utility scale systems that are subsidized. The subsidy for utility scale system is large and prolonged over 20 years or more, and the cost of that subsidy is passed on to the consumer. Whereas the residential renewable energy credit, which we're proposing here, is much smaller and limited to a one-time tax credit with no additional cost to the consumer. And these type of residential energy credits are really appropriate, I think, because of the small scale in the town and applicable in just about any situation as opposed to large scale, which can become more controversial and problematic. So with that, I'd like to I'm asking the council if they pass a resolution in support of this. Like I said, past councils have supported this, and I'd like to see us support this again this year.
Yeah, if I could confirm, you know, what Frank has told us, this, if not verbatim, very similar resolution has come before prior councils in the past, and it's always been supported. Because if I understand it correctly, does it not give allow a tax credit to the party that's
The owner of the property,
the owner
the
of the
residence.
property that's installed?
Right.
And so it allows for a tax credit, and if I remember what you've told us before, generally it was within a year, and if people, it gives people more time, if they need more time to complete a project, or.
Right, you know, a small homeowner or on a low budget, if they wanna put a system in like this, to get the tax credit just in a 1 year, they may not be able to get their full credit, so this would extend it over a 3-year period, which would give them a chance to get a full credit on their solar installation. And this is how the federal setup is, they do give a 3-year extension, so this amendment would allow the residential renewable energy credit to be extended to a 3-year period.
And once again, it's an amendment to a state statute that's in place already.
Yeah.
Well, I move for discussion, and we adopt the resolution that's presented to us.
I'll second.
Okay. I think I remember voting on this last year.
I think you did, I mean, we have in the past.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. D, introduction, consideration, and possible action, adoption of the modifications to official street map for the town of Exeter. Do you want this to play, or do we want Steven on this one?
Probably both. The street map has not been updated since 1996. There's been some changes to some of the roads over the years. The 5 I've listed for you. Of course, Gardner Road was changed from unmaintained to maintained in September 2017. 160 feet of old Yago School Road was changed from unmaintained to maintained in July of 2016. Falcon Ridge is designated as not currently accepted, but it has been accepted. Azalea Avenue is erroneously Azalea Drive. And Top Hill Drive extension in CA should be removed. The extension is now part of the road. So those corrections need to be made on the map. And I don't know if Steve, anything to add.
No, we went over this quite a few times to make sure we were accurate.
Okay, so,
Can I just inquire about what you've copied us on the back? It appears, and I'm looking at it, I stopped here because this made perfect sense, and I knew that Steve understood what changes have been made since he maintains the roads. He knows exactly what needs to be done, but this references changes in the map. Does this not apply? Do we not have to have a public hearing on this? Or tell me it says at least 10 days notice of a public hearing. We don't have to have a
You have to have a public hearing.
we do have to have, so
Have a public hearing, but you also have to ask the,
the planning, it takes the planning board to respond.
mhm.
So we're really not voting on this tonight, we're voting to put it out for public hearing.
And now, I don't know if you wanna wait put the public hearing in February?
I'd do
Or-
March.
So you wanna wait for
I'd
the
do
planning board
March.
for February and then, fine?
I'll. You want to move to a public hearing in March?
We have to vote on that.
Yeah, motion
Yeah.
move to set up a public hearing.
So March,
Yeah.
and forward it.
Well, I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion that we call for a public hearing at the March council meeting on the proposed changes to the official street map of the town of Exeter, and ask that the planning board review these proposed changes and respond to us prior to that public hearing on March. I just wondered if we knew.
Yeah.
Yes, Frank's filling us in on all the details we need tonight. March, you don't have to, you can fill it in. March,
First Monday in March is the 5th.
March 5th.
Second,
Second.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next up, E on your agenda is a typo. That is the same as C, so that's already done. F, January communication number 12, utility scale solar amendment proposal, Green Development LLC. Have Mr. Mancini here from Green Development, the attorney.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, members of the board. I submitted a correspondence, and the board members may recall at the last meeting, we did present a petition for a zone change. The board had actually recommended, upon the advice of your solicitor, to submit the same to the planning board so that they can start the process. We did so and kind of got ourselves entangled in a bit of an administrative quandary, if you will, with regards to filing an application. The planner had requested that we fill out an application. However, there's no real applicable application, given that what this is a petition for a zone change, which amends your table of uses to specifically permit utility solar with certain restrictions. It's not site-specific and it's not project-specific. So much of the information that you normally find in the application the planning board has relative to a zone change for a specific site is not applicable to this proposal. So in our opinion, the petition that we filed is essentially what we need. We have filled out an application, but the application kind of really just notes that certain sections that have been requested for information is not applicable. And we think that what we have is sufficient to start the clock running. As you're aware, under 4524, 51, there are certain timeframes that come into play. For example, at the time the petition is sought, there's 65 days for a public hearing, then there's 45 days to receive your recommendation from the planning board, and then 45 days to render a decision. So we're coming to the board kind of asking two things. One is to allow a simultaneous review of the application with the planning board and your public hearing requirement, allowing it to be advertised so that it could start the process under 4524, 51, and permit us to go to the planning board. If there are certain waivers that are required based on your application, I mean, the best place for that is in front of the planning board. But honestly, this is not any different than if one of the council members yourselves had put in a petition to amend your zoning ordinance. You wouldn't have to fill out an application. It would be specifically set for the planning board for their recommendation and then back to the council. The petition is essentially everything that you need to amend the ordinance. We will address concerns and issues that this board would have and the planning board would have as to why we think this is positive for the town and what our intentions are once and if this gets approved.
What's that? Go right ahead, Jim.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mancini. Mr. Mancini and I had a nice discussion today prior to this to try to work things out. I also had communications with Ashley, our planner, to make sure that there's no log jams. John's fairly accurate, I think, on his recap of things. We do have a slight difference of opinion as to when the clock starts running for the purposes of having to review and then act on the proposal. The way I read our ordinance, it requires an application. and the application has to be deemed complete by the planner. In this case, before the planning board gets it, and before we start the process and the clock ticking, nobody wants to hold this up. Everybody wants to be heard according to law and give everybody a fair shot at it. And so this is all about the process and the right process at this point. What I think is appropriate to do is to ask the planning board to hear Mr. Mancini's position on what is necessary in the application, so that they get on the same page on that. So Mr. Mancini's can place before the board at least a proposal that would start the clock that has been approved with a proper application as approved. That way, if you go down there, and I know Ashley's position is, you may be making some good points as to what is required and what isn't required. However, I, as the planner, can't waive those provisions. That has to be done by the planning board. So if you go to the planning board, have a discussion about the procedural aspect, that is, what do you need in an application? Hopefully you get that straightened out. They have a meeting for the 9th, which I think they can accommodate you on that particular issue. So just to be clear, what would happen at that point is the petition would not be a proposal that starts the clock running until they've got that straightened out and they're able to present what is considered to be a completed application to the planning board. Then the time starts running. So that's all I'm saying. And that's my suggestion on it.
If I may just respond, I don't disagree with that, I think that works. There's two questions that I have. One is, there's an inconsistency between the ordinance and the statute. Your ordinance does call about an application, but never defines what the application is. The state statute calls for a proposal and starts the clock ticking based on the proposal. And oddly enough, the proposal doesn't define the state statute either, so it kind of puts us in. But application does have a different connotation, which is associated normally with a checklist. And so, again, it puts us in a position where we may have to request a waiver of some checklist requirements because simply not applicable, and hopefully, I think the board will see that. The other issue.
And John, the ability to waive that is in the planning board.
Completely agree with that, and we're not asking the planner, and that's essentially where I kind of think we may have gotten into an administrative jackpot, and that is, the planner is thinking that she's the gatekeeper, and what we're saying is just allow us to go to the board, let them take a vote on whether or not, this is the process or this is not the process.
I think she's on board
Okay.
with presenting that and allowing you to address the planning board
And that works.
in that kind of context, so that you could put forward an application that everybody agrees is a completed application, and with whatever waivers.
Because the other item is that there is no requirement for a certificate of completeness with a zone change. So that, again, but those are issues that we'll address the planning board with and determine how they want to allow us to proceed with that. The second question is, and this bigger question is, when that meeting is, because we've getting some different feedback as to time. Our understanding was that it was the 29th. We're hoping it's the 9th, which would make it Monday.
That's a work session, right, correct? Work session.
Correct.
The 10th is a Tuesday, so it's the 10th?
Right now, there is no application form in that planning department?
No, there isn't. There's no, as far as a filled out application, yeah, we've got it, but there's no formal application. All we did was just all we did was check out other, where it says other, so we just checked out other, and then the other questions just made it non-applicable.
Frank and Tom,
No, Frank and Bill.
Bill, sorry, Bill. The planning board does have a work session.
Correct. I can address this.
Yeah, okay.
We have a work session on the 9th, and what we intend to do is have a special meeting before that for another issue, but
You can add.
we can add this to.
Okay, good, then there we have it.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to clear things up.
On the
At this
next
meeting,
Tuesday.
originally will be a meeting to decide what should be on the application.
Correct.
And then the application will provide the ordinance at that time.
That's correct.
So that will be the submission of the ordinance, where the clock starts when the ordinance is submitted.
The
On the
clock will
application.
start, and this is an important point, the clock will not start on the 9th
Right.
It'll start once you've come to an agreement as to what is necessary in an
And then
application.
the completed application is
Is then
submitted
forwarded.
with the ordinance, the clock
Correct.
starts then.
Once it's submitted with the proposal, it will then be a proposal
With
to
a
state
proper-
law.
Right.
As I read the, as John says, it's an interesting issue because the state law doesn't define one thing that's important to the town, and the town doesn't define something that's in state law. And so what we're trying to do here is make sense, read both of them together and try to come up with what makes sense. I personally believe that the state law sets out the parameters, but to the extent that the town planning department needs to have good information so that they have something to act on intelligently, that requires certain information come with the, as you call it, a petition. So once that's done, I think we can all agree that that is a completed application and a completed proposal at which the planning board then considers it, so, and the clock starts. Okay, so that's my reading of the law.
It's good we all get on the same page, so we
Absolutely,
start on it.
absolutely, because it's gonna come back to the town council, and we wanna make sure that the planning board has, according to the planning board's rules and regulations, intelligently looked at the proposal, and that's what we
The
want.
first meeting will decide what the application will consist of. And the
Exactly.
the completed
That's your work
application will be
It'll
submitted.
be, it won't be work session, it's gonna be a special meeting,
It's
right?
gonna be a special meeting, so we
Right,
can
that-
act on it.
And Ashley will be able to get that posted in time, so that we'll open the meeting.
Good,
Act.
good.
And basically, as far as what we're looking at, what is to be included in the application, and you're looking at waivers that they're gonna be requesting.
Right,
My
right.
understanding.
And you'll come to, hopefully, be able to work that out at this meeting on the 9th. So that after that, you will have something that, we're not fighting over whether or not it's
Right.
complete.
Whether it's completed,
Right,
right.
then you look at it on the merits.
Exactly, that beforehand we'll
Exactly.
decide what is needed to be complete.
Exactly.
I got a question for Ken. The last time a zoning matrix was changed by an applicant would have been the elderly housing, where this proposed solar farm is, right?
No, they worked with the planning board when they submitted some.
That was the
Draft
last,
of the
and that ordinance got rescinded, but, so there was no application back then either, they worked together.
I was looking at that.
He's supposed to know these things.
I don't know. That was like 10 years, right?
This issue may not have come up, I mean, this is, from my recollection, this is the first time this particular issue came up, there's never really been any,
That's what I was thinking, I was trying to think maybe when it had happened before, maybe it was a piece of paper or something.
first time I recall having to look at both the ordinance and the state statute, see how they jive.
And just if I may, just a point of clarification, when we're talking about waivers, we're not speaking of waivers in the terms that the planning board usually would understand a waiver to be, essentially if you're waiving a sidewalk or a curb. All we're saying is that the application checklist you're utilizing for a major land development project or for a major subdivision isn't what's gonna be applicable in this instance, because there's, again, no plans. This is just taking the
It's not
table-
site-specific.
It's not site-specific, so you're taking the table of use matrix and you're changing a Y to a P or a P to a Y or an S and why you're doing that. And we've kind of laid that out and giving you already a red line version so you can compare the two and see what the differences are.
Well, that's what we expect to hear at
That's
the
right.
on the night.
They're the ones to make the pitch
Okay.
to.
So special meeting Tuesday nights?
Well, that's our work session.
But you're gonna have a
And you're gonna have a
meeting.
special meeting as well.
We'll have a
Yeah.
special meeting first, though,
Also.
assuming that.
Right, on the same date as our work session. Correct.
So she'll have to get that posted tomorrow.
Yes.
She's wanting to know what she needs to do.
Can you send me the agenda too? Maybe I'll come out that night if it's not too cold. Okay, I guess that's what we can do. See you Tuesday night.
Okay.
Next up, number 10, unfinished business, historic preservation, historic cemeteries. Trailer Park License Renewal, Mobile Village Incorporated, 550 Victory Highway, Jin R. Kulsick applicant.
Last month, you made a motion that it was approved, subject to all requirements being met. I spoke to Ron DiFrancisco, he said all the roads are acceptable he's happy with the progress and, feels he can make a good faith effort and completed, welcome to the standards we wanted to see. And Perry said that she's all set with the list, so I issued the lesson because it's met those requirements and within the 30 days, so we can remove that. Give me a motion.
Motion to take B, trailer park license renewal off the agenda under unfinished business. So moved. Oh, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Impact fee study request for proposal.
Well, we emailed the latest version of the draft RFP, and I read it over, and it does go through what the council indicated that the stuff we want to go to, and that was the, not someone update the ordinance, but update the stuff that was going to be in add-on to it, so I think actually, Ron did a pretty good job on it, so if the council approves and read it, I can comment.
No, I read it as well as the first submission. This one does what we expected. So this request of proposal on impact fee study, as far as I'm concerned, is a good one. So as long as Ken's okay with it, nuts and bolts of it, I'm okay.
Yeah, I think that's the essence of what the council is.
Clarify something for me, Ken, on page 4, where it speaks about 7.0, the evaluation criteria. I'm just need to understand the evaluation of the proposal that's going to be brought to us. That's what this is in reference
That's how you
to?
score it out, so there's a formula for scoring, so the applicants can't say that some are scored, and it's just a percentage
The applicant who
wants to do.
wants to bid. Then what I was wondering about whether or not it needs to be specified, or will we determine that, who's going to do the evaluating? I mean, are we going to refer it to you, or is it going to be ultimately who's going to make those final choices?
It will be the planning board.
I mean, my thought would be, whatever we get, go to them, because they have really nothing else on their plate lately. But to at least, actually with their assistants can review, and maybe you could, you can look at it too.
And then recommendations will win as an agent. So, but in the motion, we want to approve it for putting that in paper, but also to have it disseminated in the community, because I don't know where we post our RFPs, but I don't see wide distribution of it, no matter where we post it.
Right.
And this is specialty, so.
We can go on the website too, maybe.
Yeah, when we looked at the Smithfield one, that's the one where we really got what we kind of thought we wanted, and so even to contact that company to say, yeah.
We got this out here.
Yeah,
What do you
it
think?
doesn't hurt, yeah.
No,
As long as we distribute it for them.
all around.
So, I don't know if there's a planners association.
Oh, well, actually, there
There
is.
is. But I don't know if these people plan. Maybe we can give it to our community custodian people, but send it out. He knows them all. I'm just concerned if it's put in the paper and it's not
Just,
advertised the right appropriate.
nobody's
It's not gonna go.
pushing it out there, sending it out about.
I recommend it get approved and have, really post it. In this case, I don't know, usually we give 30 days. It goes from 20 to, there's a rule, it's a 20 to, limit of 80 days. I would go higher to give people plenty of time to respond.
Yeah, because it's pretty complex, it could be pretty complex.
And we want this to.
So this still has to go back to committee and be tweaked.
No.
No, not this, but,
No.
this, you're suggesting we move forward on this?
Move forward on
Yeah,
this.
because Jim, you said you reviewed it as
Yes.
well.
Put it out to bid.
Put up the-
Need a motion?
Well, I'll certainly move, because we've been discussing this for a long time. I think we're at a point where we can move forward to get ourselves an ordinance and regulations that are good. So I'll move that we put out to bid the RFP for the impact fee study. I'm not quite sure how we word this motion, but is that coming close?
That's good enough.
Is that coming close?
I'll second that.
But then perhaps it should also be addressed as to how long we're gonna keep this process open. Should that be part of this motion that we?
Well, having to get up and look and just to the maximum amount allowed. Like,
The maximum amount of time allowed by
State purchasing
state
regulations.
purchasing regulations.
Yes.
Thank you, Ken. That's why you're here. Thank you.
Second,
I second it.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? D, introduction, consideration, and possible action and ordinance regulating certain secondary agricultural uses and activities. That's gonna be continued, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's continued. E, intermunicipal services sharing agreement with North Kingston.
Yeah.
Who gets that one?
I can give an update on that if you'd like,
Please do.
Mr. President. We had a meeting, I don't remember the specific date, first week of December, was it, Ken?
yes.
Yes. I attended, myself, Ken, Lynn, Maria, and Mr. Bob Miller, who owns a company in Cranston, who is, after great discussion about the services that he could provide, after he does a consultation of what it is that we need as far as specific needs for our technology requirements. We decided as a group, seeing that Lynn is the chief purchaser up until amount not to exceed $1,000. We decided as a group to reward this company, CMIT Solutions out of Cranston, to do the site audit for the town. I don't know if they've, have they started that yet, Lynn?
No, I'm still putting the credentials,
Okay.
administration,
Right.
administrative credentials.
Right. So the only other condition that the gentleman mentioned is that we need to get our credentials with regards to administrative passwords and so on and so forth from the town of North Kingstown, which Lynn's in the process of getting. And then they can move forward and essentially look at all of our complete technology situation regarding software, hardware, and everything that encompasses that and what we should need in the near future. So, once Lynn is done getting the credentials from North Kingstown, I assume that site audit will occur, probably, hopefully by the end of the month. And then we'll know from there exactly what we're looking at. But we had a very, I think, productive discussion about what it is that we need and what they can provide for us during the audit. And I think we should come out of the audit knowing fairly well what it exactly is that we need for the size of the municipality and the amount of employees that we have in the town hall and what our needs are. So I'm looking forward to that. It specifically said in the letter that was given to us by Mr. Miller, the areas of infrastructure that will be audited is the network, the security, the server, the workstations, and backup and recovery. And I only know from over the past couple of months that in conversations that I've had with Ken and Lynn and Maria, that several of those areas have been a concern here with the current agreement that we have now with North Kingston. So, once we get this site audit done, I believe we'll be in a good condition to make sure that we don't have any more problems with those, once we decide to go forward with an RFP and decide who we're gonna move forward with, as far as the, person that we're gonna use to provide us with those services.
Long overdue.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just ask a question, if Madam Clerk.
Well, that's Ray, well, I apologize, Ray was at that meeting as well, I'm sorry.
And the gentleman was very professional and really good.
Yes.
Covered a lot of stuff for us, and it's a lot of questions.
But, well, no, not at all. I'm good that you're taking the lead on this, because we all know it's been issues here, long standing. Now my concern is, and obviously no one was here from the Kingston to participate in that meeting, because we're doing this on our own. So my question to Madam Clerk is, do you think you need anything at this point from the council regarding your endeavors to try to procure the information that you're going to procure from them?
Well, I attempted
You know what
twice.
I'm asking.
That's a great question.
You do know what I meant.
Attempted twice.
I beg your pardon?
I attempted twice through the director. He's been on vacation.
Okay, well, so you have to give him time to come back, and
Right.
then you might come back to us.
We keep our fingers crossed.
I need to.
Yeah. Long overdue.
Well, feel free to keep us in the loop when you have any problems with acquiring the information that you need to conduct that audit as council.
Thank you.
Next up is F, introduction, consideration, possible action, proposed amendments, Exeter Code of Ordinance, Amendment A, zoning, Article 6, renewable energy, solar 11.1. Solar, that was the second version I got. I think that one was going to a work session also with the wind.
And you're right, yeah.
G, petition to amend Exeter Code of Ordinances zoning appendix A, Article 2, Section 2.469, submitted by Green Development LLC. That was just discussed in communication number 12, so we're gonna see how we do going that avenue.
These are being moved forward, these items, so.
That's it, Jim? Yeah,
That one's on there because it
But it stays there, until I'm finished, so keep going.
Okay, H, New Hawkers license application, Walt A. Lincoln Senior, 483 Trips Corner Road, Exeter, applicant, Walt Hopdog, 910 Rod Road, Exeter. Seeing something from Hal, was
That's right, yeah, it's here, and,
Or do you have an issue?
well, regarding that, application, I would move that we approve, the conditions, outlined by, zoning official, which I'll read into
Second.
This is a communication from our zoning official. Mr. Linton did come to see him. He says, as far as I'm concerned, you keep doing business where he is, if and until the second road unit is a fact. And then it says, well, and you perhaps remember this discussion from last month. I'm reading this thinking, okay, because then there was some discussion, and I noted here, Walt represents the single structure is permitted on that lot. That comes from our zoning officer. So from what he says, it should be granted. At least that's the way I read it. Do I misread it? No.
That was the only issue lacking in his application, so. What's that?
And Mr. Linton's here.
No. Then we'll need a motion.
I think I moved. Did anyone make that motion?
Okay.
Frank, second.
Discussion? Well, did you, are you just listening?
I'm trying.
Yeah, because we're about to vote to grant it to you.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, good luck.
Okay. Next up is I, administrative indexing approval for recent zoning ordinance code amendments. I guess that's where you need to straighten out some numbers and
Yeah.
stuff.
The number suggested by Ashley was
Okay.
appropriate.
Just cleaning up a couple pages, it looked like.
We just numbered all the sections, gave, indicated what articles.
Clear now.
And we're gonna change a matrix, so it's number 72, medical marijuana, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay?
Okay. Should we vote on that?
Would you like me to move?
Sure, go right
Well,
ahead.
I'll try. I move that that we approve the indexing of the zoning ordinance code amendments as proposed by planner and reviewed and approved, I believe, by Jen.
Second.
Discussion?
He's on a roll.
Well,
All in favor?
I,
Opposed? Okay, next up, J, presentation, discussion, and possible action, status of East Greenwich Community Development Consortium, and possible alternates to continue community development block grant application management. You're up, Jeff.
Okay. Thank you for the nice resolution at the beginning, that's very kind of you.
You're welcome.
So I'm gonna retire, that's a known thing, I guess, end of January. You know, I founded the consortium and I feel some obligation to provide you guys with an alternative should you want one to continue the block grant management. So to that end, we advertised a request for proposals, as advertised in all the Rhode Island Central papers plus the Sun, with proposals due at the 28th of December. Washington County CDC was the only response to that. I believe you got that background information. So they have proposed a fee structure which generally conforms with other state regulations. You can only get what the state puts in place anyway. So they're not asking, wouldn't ask for any money out of your general fund. Manage it the same way it's been managed since 1996, when we started this thing with Exeter. So I'm here to see if you, what you want to do. You want to go with the new consortium or some other kind of management, or what's your pleasure?
What's your recommendation?
Well, my recommendation, I've been thinking about retiring. It's a little earlier than my thoughts were, so I've been kind of keeping my eyes open for somebody who may be proper, appropriate to
could
move
move
in.
the ball forward.
And the person that I ultimately identified, I actually met in 1979 when I was at Community Action as a CETA crew member, if you remember CETA.
I remember seeing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Comprehensive something educational and
Comprehensive
training.
employment training.
Employment
Yeah, it's a
training.
great program. So, this person has come in and out of my life several times, and most recently, a year or so ago, oddly enough, wants to do this kind of work. Likes regulations, I guess. So, it made sense, for me to pursue that with her and the Washington County CDC. Everybody's on their end is on board. And I do recommend that you do that because it's a complicated program these days, and if you don't have someone watching the rules and regulations, there could be missteps that prove better. And I'll be on board for up to a year, possibly more, training.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? This person you say that's come in and out of your life?
Yes.
And then might this be the lady for whom we have a
Might be
resume?
this lady right here.
I was going to ask, might this be the lady that's come with you?
This is Alice Buckley.
Hey, Ms. Alice Buckley?
Yeah.
And she'd like to try to follow in your footsteps, so to speak?
So hopefully she.
Humbly,
She-
yeah.
That name, your name rings a bell.
Yeah, you look familiar to me too.
Alice has been around forever.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, well.
Almost a swamp.
Well, perhaps you might not want to pursue
No,
that.
no, the name really rings a bell.
I was a co-owner of Hardwood Design for 20 years, which is a stair building shop down by Yahoo.
That might be.
I may have did an energy audit for your.
Did you go to North Kingston?
I did, sure. I
Did you graduate?
Yes, I did. Well, I don't have to tell you that. We'll talk after.
Quick, she's quick, that's good.
So I have, as of today, I'm the new executive director of the Washington County Community Development Corporation.
As of today.
As of today, Jerry Bertrand, who's the former director, has retired, and I have gone through the process, the application process, and been hired as of today. So, and Jeff will come work with me for the next year or two as the consultant and part of the Community Development Corporation. So it'll continue to work as it has in the past.
And if I understand this then correctly, the Washington County Community Development Corporation, which you are now the CEO?
Yeah,
What
the
is
one
your
and only.
President,
Yeah.
CEO, you will, Exeter will be one of the communities for whom you will handle grant applications for funding that can help us,
Correct.
our community. We always have done some housing rehabbing, but
We'll
there
fold the
are other-
consortium in just as it exists now. The same way it exists now, will just be under a different umbrella. It won't be under the town of East Greenwich, it will be under the nonprofit world, which is really where it belongs.
Okay.
I can tell you, at this point in time, we just came from Richmond, they voted to do this. Hopkinton is in,
That's good.
West Greenwich is in. So we're Charlestown, we'll go Monday night to Kingstown there, they've got some major management changes going on in South Kingstown right now. Steve Alford retired, so I'm not sure when they'll be around.
Will it be appropriate then that the town engage Washington County to work on our behalf? Or what's the correct terminology? Should one of us choose to make a motion to move forward?
I think last month you were provided with the consortium agreement that was used back in '96. There'll be a more modern version of that consortium agreement. Each town that chooses to do this will sign this agreement with Washington County CDC.
So we would probably move to approve the agreement or accept the agreement with Washington County Community Development Corporation. Is that the correct language?
The contract for services or the agreement for services is not unlike the request for proposals. Actually. That's where that request for proposals came from. It's the latest streamlined version of the consortium agreement.
And is this a multi-year commitment? I know I had a brief discussion today that there might be a concern that we should do this for a year to see. I mean, what is your, I didn't read this.
We never, I won't say it wasn't defined, it was you're in until you want to be out. Narragansett's the only town, and they haven't even followed through on it. Tell them I said that. They wanted to look at it every year, but they didn't.
No,
So, you know, it's in until you want to be out, or the program just goes away, there's no point in having it. Unless you want to define a term, I don't know.
I just understood there might be a concern about a long term, but not necessarily, no. Well, I think we should make the appropriate motion. You have the language, don't you? You have the language?
Go for it, Calvin.
No,
You're on a roll
I
tonight.
don't.
Cal's back. Cal's back.
No, I would say that, I would move that we engage through agreement with the Washington County Community Development Corporation, their services to administer Exeter's portion of the CDBG funds grant. Is that anywhere close?
Nailed it. I'll second that, Calvin. Discussion?
Just to say thank you, welcome.
Thank you.
good luck, Jeff, for everything you've done, and the resolution doesn't speak to the years that you've helped us. So thank you.
She's gotta get used to climbing the stairs though.
Oh, we moved. You gotta.
Oh, they're out of East Greenwich.
They're out of East Street.
They're gone. And where are you located now? Well, no, I was just asking.
CBC's has a Spice in the Lafayette Mill in the northeast on 10 Mile Road.
That's where you'll be, your office will be down.
We're looking for a larger space, so we
Okay,
may
that's
stay
where
in
you
that
are.
building.
Okay.
We need room for Jeff's big desk.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
You still
Nineteen
Last
eighty.
name.
you still need this
Say
big.
again?
Buckley.
Buckley.
I went to school with her.
Yeah, but no relation.
And I was in school.
At the school, yeah. How come she's almost a swamp? She must be a swamp.
Yeah.
I think I used to hear your name on the intercom.
Yeah.
Where's the office?
I hope-
Just like Dave. That's why it clicked.
I hope not.
Yeah.
I won't tell.
See, unlike Mr. Bradley, we were in the same class. He was in class room, and I was in the front end. We're not the same. No, we're not the same. Jeff, thanks. Good luck to you.
Let's see, number 11, reports of officers, boards, and committees. A, Public Works Department Liaisons Report.
Yes, looks like they're gearing up for a big storm. Up the sand, and the plows are on the trucks. I got my plow. And, looks like you guys are ready to roll. So I don't know what we're gonna get. I don't know if the latest forecast, I know it's,
1 to 24.
Yeah,
24, I can
probably pretty accurate.
About it, I know you had a problem down at the garage today. Did you get the heater figured out?
Yeah, it was fixed by 2:30.
Good.
So we have the heat fixed. We, all the trucks are 100% ready to go, full of material, so. This one, I mean, we've been chasing 1-inch storms, and they're more costly than a 6-inch storm.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate, but it's the amount of material you waste on the long-term small storms. Costs just as much as, you know, a 4, 3, 6-inch storm, so.
Are you sufficient with material?
Currently, we're full up.
Good.
Okay, good. Next up, Transfer Station Liaisons Report.
I see they had taken the metal out. Last time we had a truck problem.
Yeah, the company that's taking the scrap metal is perpetually truck issues. I don't believe they're gonna buy one. They're just using vendors. So they're at the mercy of their vendors to haul out their own box out of our facility. As well as the mattresses, that becomes a problem. Sometimes it's 2 weeks before they'll haul a full box out. It'll be full for 2 weeks and we can't accept mattresses, which are free to the public under the program. So we're having little hauling issues with those vendors, but it's a zero cost to the town, so it's sort of difficult. They're doing the best they can. So.
How are we doing with e-waste? A lot of people bringing e-waste in?
E-waste is going very well. The company's great. We call them when the box is about 3/4 full, and they come empty. So that's, again, a zero cost to the town. There's a few costs for some of the items going in the box. In case they back charge us for some of the larger items that they can charge for. Specifically, certain printers, laser printers, they charge us back. So that cost is being covered by the large TVs that are being deposited in.
Our compactors, they like to run in the cold?
We haven't had a problem with the cold on the compactors. We've had some small minor things, broke a key off in one of the switches. I had that fixed. Waiting for a new switch because you can't get keys made for the old switch anymore. So that's about the only problem there. Other than that, everything's going
pretty smooth down there, I know. It's good.
Okay, animal control, we already heard that. D, tax collector's office liaison report.
Yes. Report, which you all received in your packet from Kim, said that the total collections for the month of December were $2,309,865.93, and all monies have been reported to the treasurer.
Exeter West Greenwich School District Liaison, keep going, Frank.
All right, I don't have anything specific from the superintendent. I think all of you got the Wabaloo newsletter in your packet.
Yes.
With regards to.
Good he.
Yes. So that gives you a little bit of insight with regard to that school particularly. The only thing I should remind the council about, and I don't have the date on that yet, but I expect that I will have it, is the upcoming omnibus meeting, which should be this month.
Okay. F, Tax Assessor Office Liaison's report.
Yeah, just, you all have received Carrie's report. Just one thing that I wish you'd make note of, well, there are dates that are coming due, but Carrie has identified these for the specific people to whom they apply. Applications have been sent. January 31st, deadline for farm, forest, and open space renewals, and March 15th for elderly disabled exemptions. But the interesting thing that is the middle of her report, to me it's interesting because the Rhode Island Conservation Committee received a grant from the U.S. Department of Agriculture and allowing, well, let me just read it because it's better, that the Rhode Island Conservation Districts, to allow those districts to further assist owners in obtaining necessary documents to enroll their land into the farm, forest, and open space program. And the Assessing Association, or Assessing Officers Association, agreed to contribute in excess of 52,000 of in-kind matches throughout the next 5 years. And what that means is that the assessors of individual communities are making data available to the Rhode Island State Conservation Committee to help people that may wish to move their property. If it's 10 acres, it has to be a minimum of 10, as you probably know. If people want to put their properties into a farm, forest, or open space designation, and it's identifying parcels that might be eligible. It's the assessors of the various towns are providing information. It all assists taxpayers to lessen the load or the burden, if you will. So I just thought, that's a good program that she articulated for me and to all of you.
Okay, next up is Job Corps.
Just a couple of items here, and then a specific one about your concerns expressed earlier. There is a new center director. His name is Adam White. I have not yet met him, but he's been there now for a month. And I think these notes, you must have provided me with these notes. Did you not, Lynn? Thank you. I was not able to go to the last meeting where I should have attended. But the big issue apparently that came out of the last meeting for community relations people is that there's a tough love, so to speak, policy that's come down. Students are not allowed to miss more than 2 days. If they do, they're removed from the program. This has caused not only Exeter but other centers to have some real issues. This came down from up above. And sometimes there are kids who need to be away. I mean, they need to have an illness or, a death in the family. Something happens, and from what I gather, this has caused some issues. So they're no longer in the #1 spot in the country, which they have been for many times, but close, and will improve. But Lynn points out to me that I'm sharing with you, they remain, and this has happened before, #1 in the country in placement of the students who graduate from the center. And that's pretty big, the kids coming out of there, they find positions, they find jobs. That part of it is a great program. So, there's a lot of talk, and every time I read, just recently, there was an article about how schools need to be improved and specific programs need to be supported for skills and for, hands-on opportunities, because not all kids need to necessarily head for college. And this is what Job Corps does here as a federal program, to puts kids at, what do you call it, EB in Quonset and jobs other places. So they're doing the thing over here, right in Exeter, that people keep saying needs to be done, not only statewide, but all over. So I just want to speak to that. The specific issue, and you've seen a letter, I think, that was distributed to you. It's actually communication number 17, because you remember that you'd asked concerns about, you'd mentioned some concerns about safety. And here's the letter, just, you probably have all read it, from the new center director. And it specifically says that when students return from winter break, they're going to be meeting, asking them for their input about how to reduce the possibility of being hit by vehicles on either Main Street or Route 2. And so, and it says here reflective vests are being ordered, and they'll be provided to students as they leave the property to walk on the road. So we'll have to see if that, in fact, is a plan that comes to fruition. And then let's just note also for the record, you must have requested this in December, the letter that Lynn sent to RIPTA, asking that RIPTA consider improving their bus stop locations.
Yes.
So the council must have asked you to, and you did, and so let's hope that it brings about some kind of results. If you wish me to continue, Dan.
Go right ahead.
Sorry, I wish I had a report from Washington County Regional Planning, but there is a letter sent and you were copied. Just note that we wish that it could be up and running. I have not spoken to the director. I remember in the fall, he said after the first of the year, he would attempt to do more outreach and try to get some people to join. And interesting that a communication from Mr. Cerullo indicated that this was an issue Washington County Regional Planning ought to be concerned about, but we're not, because we don't meet, but I hope we will. So I'm sorry, that's all I can tell you. Sorry, that's it.
Okay, Public Safety Disaster Preparedness Committee, Town Sergeant, Town Council Liaison Report. That's me. It's been quiet, a few minor snowstorms, and whatever's coming up Thursday, we have no idea. Once again, on the town's website, you can sign up with Stefan's Code Red, where you can get all your updated emergency management reports. He does a good job. So, let's see, next one. Exeter Rural Land Preservation Trust Committee. I did not make their meeting this month because I got stuck at work, but they were working on a mission statement, I believe, that I had here. So they're still doing all the background work. And, this was sent to me for Christmas. They were still arguing over the logo between here and Bird, so I do know that. So, but it's ongoing. Next up is Public Library Liaison's Report. Kevin is sick. L, North Kingston Preserve at Rolling Greens, that's Kevin's, he's not here. M, Town Council Assistance Report.
What's that?
All set?
Beautiful.
Solicitors Report.
3 or 4 matters for executive session under items A and C.
Okay. Number 12, bills, appropriations, abatements. A, the bill sheet. I have to recuse myself from that, so.
I'll make a motion to I'm sorry, Ken.
No, I wish you would.
I'll make a motion to approve the bill sheet dated December 28th,
Second.
2017.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, discussion.
Opposed? Oh, good discussion, I'm sorry.
Well, I just had a question for Steve. Steve, can you speak to us about the $1,100 bill from the Salmon River? Were those additional cats that had to be spayed and neutered, or?
1,100, that's most likely 2 bills.
Yeah, it was one for 400 and one
Right.
for 710.
Right. That was most, yeah, they're cats.
Yeah, so out of the 35 cats or so that we had to get additional ones that had to be spayed and neutered, or was it kittens, or? you know?
There was kittens that had to have their shots, rabies. There were spayed and neuters on some trapped cats. That's all in there. 'Cause I know there was a 450 was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, and the other one, 750 was, or 700 was just this last week. After, either before Christmas or right thereafter. So we had, that was the month basically of December.
Right.
Other than that, we haven't had, I believe, we haven't bedded a dog. We might have bedded a dog yesterday or today, but, I think today, but that's, other than that, it's been cats.
Okay.
But some percentage of that, not all, obviously, some percentage of that comes back with through adoption fees? or-
Yes, some does
But not-
return.
Probably not all of it, for sure. but-
It's 25 usually or 50, depending how many animals are adopted through the spade and neuter
So
fund.
there is some offset.
Right, there is return. You don't see it there unfortunately, because it's
Yeah.
60, 90 days out sometimes.
Right, you have to look at the individual.
You have to look at you have to look at the other,
Yeah,
the other paperwork, right?
okay.
But again, it's, some of that's medication, some of that's shots, some of that's, spade and neuters.
Okay. Thanks, Steve.
Next up, tax assessments abatements.
Take the vote.
Move over. You voted
Well, you took the motion in the second, and he had discussion.
Oh, okay, all in favor of approval of the bill sheet?
Aye.
Opposed?
Just perhaps for the, just note for the record, there are no tax assessor abatement, nor are there any remittances and remittances and abatements. And I couldn't find any, so I asked him to know if there are any.
So that leaves us to 13, other administrative issues.
So you're gonna do a work session on solar and wind?
Yes.
The work session, not special, right? Solar and wind? Okay. So I have some dates, if you wanna,
Go for it.
we have January 8th,
Next Monday.
January 16th, January 18th, 22nd, 25th, 29th, and 30th.
Well, this building
This building, yeah, here, this room.
What do you have on the 16th? What day is that?
The 16th.
Tuesday,
That's the third Tuesday of the month?
yes.
Oh, okay. The 18th will be a Thursday, I'm ready for that one. What else was it?
The 22nd, 25th, 29th, and 30th.
So the 22nd will be a Monday, right?
Is that a Monday, Frank?
22nd, yes.
Probably good on that one too. And the 25th would be a Thursday.
Yes.
And then it's Monday, Tuesday, the 29th and 30th.
What are you asking for, 2 days? Two
No,
work
these
sessions?
are all the days she has available.
Pick a date that you
I
think.
can't do the 10th and I can't do the 31st. Because we have our animal shelter study committee, Tom, remember?
10.
There you go.
You didn't say, did you say the 31st?
I didn't say that.
Early.
I didn't say the.
Late
It's,
afternoon.
The 30th, the 29th, the 18th, the 22nd, and the 25th. We also had that special you were gonna do with the executive station.
The 29th is a Monday too, isn't it?
So you have a work session for solar, a work session for wind, and you wanted to do a special for the transfer station study.
Executive.
Executive session.
So that way, I mean, it's, I don't know what time we're gonna reach for executive session. I mean, it's on the agenda for executive session tonight, but we probably better discuss that at a special meeting.
Yeah, we thought it was gonna take more time than
Right,
we wanna take tonight.
right.
Is that executive session, we can do that in work session, right, if they're not gonna be votes?
You could, I would put it down as a special meeting for
For the work
executive session.
For an executive session.
Yeah, you could do it on the same night.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
could
You just can't
and
vote
go
on
into
it,
executive.
Mhm.
You can't go from the work session to an executive session, right?
It would have to convene a regular meeting and then go into executive session.
Has to be special.
But it's not a work session.
Executive session has to be special, it can't be work session.
Correct, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's just an administrative thing because you're gonna post them both anyway, right? So it's just for the same night and you have two sessions.
Well,
So I don't know if you wanna do it all one night, 2 nights, 3 nights.
I'm good, the 18th, 22nd, the 25th, and the 29th.
Likewise.
Yeah, I think I am too.
So we
Same
can
here.
do two, if that'd be the easiest, because Zach probably do 2 meetings.
Might as well do both the wind and the solar at the same
Yeah,
night.
the wind and solar, one and the executive and another.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So what date do you want, Dan? Are you gonna pick it, or you gonna Lynn pick
We
Well,
can,
you're inviting the planning board on the solar and the wind, right?
it? Yes.
we can probably do that on the 18th. That would be planning. And then you'd have to check with the other members for that executive session, Frank, see what days they're available.
Right.
22nd, the 25th, or the 29th? Okay.
We can coordinate that.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm open, those 4 days, those 3 dates I'm open, so.
Okay.
So we have a vote for the 18th?
The 18th,
Would be planning with the zoning and wind ordinance,
That's the 18th?
the
Yeah.
solar and the
the
wind,
solar and wind, I'm sorry.
and then the special for transfer station and executive report, study committee executive report, 22nd, 25th, or 29th, depending on availability.
Mm-hmm.
Of the committee, right?
Well, yeah, we're gonna invite John, who was the chairman, and then Steve and Maria, and then the council.
Not the whole committee.
I don't think we did the whole committee, just John.
We're just gonna invite John. And then you with us.
Okay, so we got the 18th. That's here.
And then we're not sure of the others, so we gotta poll and see when others can come.
As soon as I find out, I'll let you know.
There you go. I have to do this fast, my battery's gonna run out. I'm talking to myself.
So this is gonna be 7 o'clock here, right?
7 PM.
And we're good. Next up is number 14, communications. Calendar year number 1, we didn't discuss that yet.
No, and I only mentioned it only because it's some information that was brought to us that, well, it says it's a watershed issue, but, you know, these folks have spoken to that, and I don't know exactly where Mike Cirillo got his information, but it's just something he wanted to alert us to. And I just also note, he says it ought to be brought to the planning council's attention. Well, that would be fine, but we're not meeting, so that's all. I don't want to do anything with it, just.
You got number 2 also.
I did, and you probably know, we've been getting these letters periodically for years about changing our arrangement with the cell towers. And we don't do anything, we probably shouldn't or won't, but I was just gonna ask if we could pass this on to Maria, who manages Emily, and ask at a future date if she has any thoughts that she can share as to whether or not something like this might, something perhaps we ought to think about, or should we continue to ignore these requests as we get them? SBA, aren't those the people we currently deal with?
Yes.
That's what I thought. So that would be my suggestion. We'll just ask Maria to look at the letter, and then if she, in fact, if you think it's something we ought to consider, Maria, you could even tell us. If we don't hear anything, we put it aside. That's my thought.
There you go.
Okay?
That works.
Okay?
Let's see, number 13 we addressed, 16, Rhode Island League of City and Towns.
Yeah, 12, yeah, 12 is me, we got that one, so.
And I mentioned 12, it was already on the agenda, so
No, you got 16, that's
I did speak to 16, I noticed it's it's just suggesting or asking for a slight increase in dues of $279. They speak for everybody, I don't know how effective, but I think we should do that.
Dan Beers was pretty good, the kid they got in there now is even better.
Oh, is he good? Okay.
The weekly update when they're in session, so.
Well, like, yeah, we should get those, but just Maria, I want to be sure Maria notes this for our budget and Ken notes that, I know you have, so that's fine.
17 we discussed, 21 we discussed, and 23 tree ward. All done.
We've taken care of it.
So that leaves, last but not least, executive session.
Must be cold out there, Marie, still got her gloves.
Bye, Steve, thanks.
Is it cold
Thank
enough
you,
to the
Maria.
audience tonight?
Be nice and warm tomorrow, it'll be 30.
I'm gonna open the window, Cal, is that all right?
No, I don't,
You
what,
can make a motion to go into executive.
Do you need a motion to go into executive session?
We'll take a 2-minute recess.
Yeah, we can take a 2 minute break.
Silly.
Yes.
You need a motion for that?
Motion to take a break? I guess.
Smoke them if you got them.
All right.
So 5 o'clock, Tom?
Yeah.
All right.